He trusted his best friend until his wife was stolen by his friend. The late autumn afternoon in suburban Houston, Texas, carried a cool breeze mingling with the scent of freshly cut grass and barbecue smoke drifting from a neighbor's grill. Oak-lined streets led to a modern American home, its red-tiled roof gleaming under the setting sun. A polished Ford F-150 parked in the garage. Jake Larson stepped out of an airport taxi, his khaki duffel bag heavy on his shoulder. He inhaled deeply, letting the familiar smell of home fill his lungs. After a month as a chief engineer on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, surrounded by the roar of machinery and the salt of the sea, this house was his sanctuary. Inside, warm, golden light spilled from the open kitchen where Sarah, his wife, bustled over dinner. The sizzle of steak on the skillet, blended with the aroma of roasted garlic and herbs. A comforting symphony of family life. In the living room, the TV blared a Houston Texans football game, its lively commentary barely drowning out Sarah's soft humming of Sweet Home Alabama. She wore a floral apron, her blonde hair tied high, the picture of a perfect American wife. But when she turned to greet Jake, her smile felt forced, like she was playing a role in a script they'd both memorized. Steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Your favorite, Sarah said, setting a skillet on the stove. How was the flight? Fine, Jake replied, dropping his bag on the oak floor. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling her familiar warmth. But there was an invisible distance. Not coldness, exactly, but a sense they were both holding a fragile family portrait together. He kissed her cheek, and she smiled, though her eyes quickly darted back to the stove, their daughters. Mia, 17, and Chloe, 18, were upstairs, likely glued to TikTok or bickering over something trivial. They no longer rushed to hug him like they did as kids, when his homecomings were grand events. Jake chalked it up to teenage years. Kids grow up, find their own worlds. He'd missed milestones because of work. Mia's first ballet recital, Chloe's championship basketball game. But the Disney World trips, the latest iPhones and fully funded college accounts, were his way of making up for it. To him that was enough. As Sarah turned to grab plates, Jake noticed a small box on the kitchen counter wrapped in shimmering silver paper. "What's that?" he asked, pointing. Sarah flinched, quickly, snatching it up. "Oh, just a gift from a co-worker. Late birthday thing," she said, stuffing it into a drawer. Jake nodded, but her averted gaze sparked a flicker of doubt. He pushed it aside, not wanting to ruin his first night home. Yet a seed of suspicion had been planted. That evening, as Sarah cleared the kitchen, Jake decided to call Mia and Chloe down for dinner. The wooden staircase creaked under his boots, each step a reminder of the home he'd worked so hard to pay for the life he'd built. Mia's bedroom door was ajar, a sliver of lamplight spilling into the hall. He raised his hand to knock, but froze when he heard Chloe's voice, sharp and furious. "I'm so sick of Mum pretending everything's fine." Her and Luke think Dad's too dumb to notice. Jake went rigid, his hand hovering mid-air. Luke Bennett, his high school buddy, the guy who'd crashed on their couch when his startup tanked Luke, who'd fixed their plumbing when Jake was offshore, the one he considered a brother. His heart pounded, but he stayed still, ears straining. Mia's voice came softer, tense. "Don't you see? Mum's happier with Luke. Dad's always gone, Chloe. When's he ever really here? Don't defend her," Chloe snapped. "She wears Dad's ring, lives in Dad's house, spends Dad's money, but she's cozying up to Luke right in front of Grandma. And you know what? Grandma didn't say a word. Like everyone knows. Except Dad." Jake's fists clenched, nails biting into his palms. Mia whispered, "Do you ever think maybe Luke's our real dad?" Mum said something once like, she wasn't sure. Chloe let out a bitter laugh. So what if he is? Luke wouldn't ditch Mom like Dad does. The words stabbed Jake's chest sharp and cold. He stepped back, silent as a ghost. But before heading downstairs, he slipped into the master bedroom. Sarah was still in the kitchen. His chance. He scanned her vanity, opening a drawer. Beneath a tangle of jewellery, he found a bundle of old letters tied with red ribbon. One was addressed to Sarah in Luke's scrawled handwriting. You're my light. Sarah, don't worry. Jake'll never know. The date was nearly a decade old around when Mia was a toddler, Chloe a newborn. Jake shut the drawer, his heart sinking. He returned to the kitchen, forcing a smile. But his world was cracking. This house wasn't a haven anymore. It was a maze of secrets. A week later, Jake didn't return to the rig as planned. Instead, he checked into a cheap motel on the edge of Houston, where stale cigarette smoke clung to the curtains and neon lights flickered outside. He contacted Tom Carter, a renowned divorce lawyer in Texas, whose sharp eyes and calm voice carried quiet authority. Texas is a community property state, Tom said. If Sarah's cheating, we can make sure she walks away with nothing but. You need proof. Hard, undeniable evidence. Jake nodded his gaze steely. He bought 2 GPS trackers and a tiny voice recorder from an electronics store. That night, under the cover of darkness in his quiet neighborhood, he crept to their garage and attached a tracker to the undercarriage of Sarah's Cadillac SUV. The recorder was tucked beneath the driver's seat, invisible to anyone who didn't know it was there. Luke wasn't spared either. Jake drove to Luke's rundown apartment complex where rusted cars littered the lot. He secured a tracker to Luke's Jeep Wrangler, checking the signal on his phone. Their every move was now his to monitor. One afternoon, Jake ran into Luke at a local coffee shop. Luke sat with a mug, flashing his usual easy grin. Jake. Been a while, man, he said, clapping Jake's shoulder. But there was a fleeting wariness in his eyes. Jake played along, asking about Luke's job, but he noticed Luke checking his phone obsessively, like he was expecting a message. Heard you've been helping Sarah out while I'm away, Jake said, keeping his tone casual. Appreciate it. Luke's smile tightened. No big deal, just being a friend. But the word friend rang hollow now. Jake left the shop, his suspicions deepening. Luke wasn't just a buddy, he was a threat, and Jake was done being blind. One night, tracking the GPS, Jake saw Luke's Jeep stop at a seedy motel on Houston's outskirts. A young woman, Rachel, stepped out of Luke's room, her tight dress and wary eyes catching the dim streetlight. Jake saw his chance. Luke wasn't just betraying him. He was cheating on Sarah too. He reached out to Rachel through a contact arranging a meeting at a grimy diner. He slid an offer across the table. 10 grand to help me. 20. If you get me proof of what Luke says about Sarah and my family. Rachel hesitated, but her eyes lit up at the stack of cash. Luke's in deep, she said, voice low. Gambling sports bets. You name it. He told me Sarah pays his debts dipping into her joint account with her husband. But that's not the worst part. Jake leaned in. What is... Rachel took a breath. Luke owes a crew in Pasadena. Bad guys, the kind who don't mess around. Sarah doesn't know, but Luke said if she stops paying, he'll drag her into it. Jake's blood ran cold. This wasn't just infidelity. Sarah was being played, and his family might be in danger. But before he left, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off Luke's business, Larson, or you'll regret it." He scanned the diner, but no one stood out. Handing Rachel an extra $5,000, he said, "Record every word he says. Every plan he's got." Rachel nodded, fear flickering in her eyes. "If they find out I'm helping you, I'm dead. I'll keep you safe," Jake promised, though he wasn't sure he could. Jake crafted a meticulous plan. He'd work with Rachel to set a trap. Catch Sarah witnessing Luke with Rachel at the motel, then broadcast it live on Sarah's Instagram to expose them. But he needed Mia's help. One afternoon, he picked her up after school, pulling over at a quiet park. "Mia," he said, voice heavy, "I need you to do something for me. I know about your mum and Luke." Mia's face paled, tears welling up. "I'm sorry, Dad. I wanted to tell you, but Mum said it'd tear us apart." Jake hugged her, his heart aching. "It's not your fault. I just need you to log into Mum's Instagram on this phone, that's all." He handed her a burner phone, guilt gnawing at him. He was dragging his daughter into a war she shouldn't have to fight. The next day, Jake checked their joint bank account and found Sarah had withdrawn $15,000 without explanation. He called her voice. Calm. "Sarah, what was that money for?" she stammered. "Just stuff for the girls." But Jake knew she was lying, that cash was likely in Luke's hands, paying off his gambling debts. Rage surged, but he held it in. His plan was almost ready, and he'd make them both pay. The Blue Moon motel sat on Houston's fringe, its neon sign flashing red and green against the night. Jake stood in room 109, eyes glued to a laptop streaming from a hidden camera in room 108, where Rachel and Luke were. Rachel had texted Sarah from Luke's phone. "Sarah, get to Blue Moon. Room 108. Emergency. Don't call back." She'd locked the phone in airplane mode. In room 108, Luke spilled to Rachel. "Sarah thinks I'll marry her once she ditches Jake. What a joke. I just need her cash to clear my debts. The kids. Don't care whose they are." Jake's fists tightened nails, digging into his skin. Sarah burst into the room like a hurricane, hair wild, eyes blazing. She saw Rachel, shirt askew, and Luke pale as a ghost. "You piece of trash!" Sarah screamed, lunging at Rachel, grabbing her hair. Rachel shoved back, yelling, "You think you're better? You're sleeping with your husband's best friend." Then Mia appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with horror. "Mum," she whispered. Sarah froze, letting go of Rachel. "Mia, why are you here?" "I followed you," Mia said, voice trembling. "I had to know the truth." She turned to Luke, tears streaming. "Are you my dad?" Sarah sank to her knees, sobbing. "Mia, I don't know. I'm not sure." A stranger barged in, leather jacket, glinting eyes cold. "Luke, you think you can hide?" he growled. "Where's my money?" Jake recognized him, a creditor from Luke's gambling debts. Sarah panicked. Rachel shrank back and Luke stammered, "I'll pay, I swear." Jake stepped in, voice like iron. "Enough." He faced Sarah, Luke, and the thug. "This ends now." Jake raised his phone, hitting the live stream button on Sarah's Instagram. The screen lit up with the caption, "The truth comes out." Hundreds of viewers, Sarah's friends, co-workers, family poured in their names, racing across the feed. He stared at Sarah, voice hard. You're finished, Sarah. You too. Luke. Sarah dropped to the floor, tears spilling over Jake. Please, she choked out. I was alone. You were always gone. You lied to me, Jake shot back. You used my money to bankroll this guy and made me doubt Mia and Chloe are mine. He turned to Luke, the friend he'd trusted for years. I treated you like blood. Worst mistake I ever made. Sarah's voice cracked, barely audible. Mia. Chloe. I don't know if they're yours or Luke's. I was too afraid to find out. The words cut deep, but Jake held his ground. I'll get the truth, he said, but you've got no claim to them anymore. Mia, still at the door, cried out, Mom, how could you do this to Dad? Her voice broke as she ran off. Her sobs echoing down the hall, Sarah screamed her name, reaching out, but Mia was gone. The leather-jacketed thug watching the chaos gave a cruel chuckle. What a circus, he said. You're all done for. He walked out, leaving a heavy silence. That night Jake's phone rang. Chloe. Dad. I saw the live stream, she said, voice shaking with hurt. Mum screwed up, but putting it out there like that, I'm so embarrassed. Jake tried to explain to tell her about the years of lies, but she hung up. He sat in the dark, the sting of Chloe's words sinking in like he'd lost her all over again. Jake sat in his old F-150 pickup, parked on a quiet back street behind the Blue Moon Motel. Night had fallen. A soft wind drifted through the half-open window, carrying the distant sounds of traffic horns and music from a nearby bar. On his phone screen, comments from the live stream continued to roll in outrage, sympathy, and even mockery. He had exposed the truth, but what he received wasn't peace. It was a heavier kind of loneliness. His phone buzzed again, a message from lawyer Tom Carter. We're proceeding with the unilateral divorce. Need your confirmation for temporary custody of the children. Jake gripped the pen ready to sign, but then hesitated. Chloe hadn't returned his calls in days. Mia had locked herself in her grandmother's house, where Sarah was now hiding too. His family was like shattered glass, and the pieces were slipping out of his hands. The next morning, Jake returned to what used to be his sanctuary, gathering personal belongings. While clearing the bookshelf, he found an old file tucked behind the shelves, one Sarah had claimed was lost. The bold title on the cover made his heart stop. DNA test result, Jacob Larson and Mia Larson, 2007. The result was clear. No biological relationship. Jake collapsed to his knees, hands trembling as he held the paper. Despite his suspicions, the confirmation still felt like a final dagger to the heart. But then another thought surfaced. Sarah had tested Mia alone. What about Chloe? He couldn't live in uncertainty anymore. 3 days later, Chloe finally agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe. At 18, she looked older than before. Grief and betrayal aged her eyes. She didn't shout or accuse, just looked tired. I wasn't part of that circus, Dad, she said softly. But you dragged me into it like a pawn. Why didn't you trust us instead of broadcasting it to the world? Jake nodded, shame lowering his gaze. I thought exposing the truth would set things right, but now I see it only made it worse. He placed a DNA test kit on the table. I won't force you, but I need to know. Not just for me, for you. Chloe studied the box for a long time. Finally, she said, I'll do it. Not for you. For myself. I need to know. A week later, the DNA results arrived at Tom's office. Chloe was Jake's biological daughter. Jake wept as he read the line, feeling for the first time in months that he hadn't lost everything, he reached out to Chloe again. This time they had dinner together, just the two of them, in a quiet corner of a local Mexican restaurant. Chloe murmured, "Even if Mia's not your biological daughter, you're still the one who taught her to ride a bike. Stayed up all night when she was sick. That doesn't change, right?" Jake held her hand, voice thick. "Not ever." While Jake worked to rebuild his connection with his children, Sarah was spiraling. The live stream fallout had suspended her from work. Colleagues whispered behind her back. Her own mother refused to speak to her. Luke had vanished, likely fleeing town after his debt. Collectors began closing in. One evening, Sarah showed up at Jake's new place, her face gaunt, eyes hollow. "I'm not here to beg forgiveness," she said. "I just want you to know. I didn't know Mia wasn't yours, I suspected, but I was too scared to find out." Jake stared, unmoved. "We both made mistakes, but I can't forget, and I won't go back." Sarah nodded. "I know. I just hope you won't let hate destroy what's left between you and the girls." Jake sold the house, a symbol of success, turned into a monument of betrayal. He moved to Austin, closer to Chloe's college, and began teaching mechanical engineering at a local technical school. One day a letter arrived from Mia. "I'm sorry I didn't know how to love you the right way, but I remember when you carried me to bed, when you burned pancakes and still laughed. I'm not ready to see you, but I still call you Dad in my heart." Jake folded the letter, tucked it into his wallet, and carried it everywhere he went. Jake had lost his wife, his best friend, and his trust in everything, once solid. But he hadn't lost himself. By facing the painful truth, he found something more important: his daughters. Not perfect love, not restoration, but something enduring. Not all wounds heal. Some become scars, and scars mean you survived. Jake had started a new rhythm of life in Austin, far from the streets that used to echo his pain. He lived in a modest apartment with low ceilings and a balcony overlooking a quiet park. By day, he taught mechanical engineering at a local community college, his classroom full of curious young students, admiring the way he blended real-world experience into his lectures. By night, he wrote not a diary, but a memoir titled The Blind Husband. He didn't know if he'd ever publish it, but writing helped him organize the chaos inside him, like putting pain on paper could make it less sharp. One June afternoon, Mia texted, "I'm coming to Austin next week. Might stay a few days if that's okay." Jake stared at the screen. Each word felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "I'd love that. I'll cook your favorite." When Mia arrived, there was no immediate hug, but their eyes met with a quiet understanding. For 3 days, Jake cooked, took her walking around Town Lake, and bought vanilla ice cream, her childhood favorite. She was still guarded, but on the 3rd night, Mia knocked on his door. "I read your manuscript," she whispered. "I cried. But I also felt lighter because you didn't hate Mom. You were just hurt." Jake said nothing. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into him like she did when she was little. One rainy afternoon on his drive home from school, Jake's truck was forced off the road by an SUV. The driver stepped out. "Luke." "Jake, hear me out," he shouted, face, gaunt eyes sunken. Jake opened his door, gripping his keys like a weapon. "You've got a hell of a nerve showing up, Jake. I'm being hunted. The Pasadena crew doesn't just want their money. They've taken Rachel. If I don't deliver 50 grand, they'll kill her." Jake froze. "You think I care after what you did?" Luke's hands trembled. "I know I messed up, but Rachel helped you. She doesn't deserve this." Jake's mind wavered. Luke was a liar, but Rachel wasn't. Prove it. Show me she's really in danger. Then maybe I'll think about it. Through a contact, Jake confirmed Rachel's disappearance. A video arrived from an anonymous email. Rachel tied to a chair holding a newspaper. With that day's date, Jake had no choice. He called Tom Carter, now more than a lawyer, almost a friend. Tom, I need to liquidate part of my life insurance account. Emergency funds. 50 grand. Tom gritted his teeth. Are you sure, after all that? Jake nodded. I'm doing it for my conscience, not for Luke. Jake arranged a fake drop at an abandoned warehouse outside the city. But this time he wasn't alone. An FBI contact, an agent who had worked on Pasadena loan shark cases, agreed to intervene. At the warehouse, Jake showed up with a silver briefcase. Luke was waiting with 2 unfamiliar men. One of them sneered. You're on time, smart man. Jake demanded to see Rachel. They brought her out, bruised, scared, but alive. He opened the case. Instead of cash inside was a GPS beacon audio recorder and covert livestream camera. The FBI moved in. Gunshots rang out. All 3 suspects were subdued. Rachel was rushed to safety, sobbing. You came back for me. After the sting, Luke was arrested, charged with fraud, kidnapping, and aiding organized crime. In an exclusive interview, Rachel exposed the full story, helping the FBI dismantle a local crime ring. Jake refused all press inquiries. He returned to teaching writing, and every weekend he called Mia and Chloe. Sometimes both would speak. Jake now lived slower. He cared for a small olive tree on his balcony. Each morning he watered it and watched new shoots stretch toward the sun. He often recalled an old proverb, a man plants an olive tree, knowing he will not eat its fruit. He does it for those who come after. He had lost much, but the things he rebuilt, truth, redemption, fatherhood, would one day offer shade for those he loved.